This video is proudly sponsored by Squarespace. The glute bridge might look like a fairly naff exercise. You're kind of lying there on the ground, impotently thrusting at the heavens. It's nothing like a movement you might use in the real world, and it doesn't even involve much resistance. But that's really not the point. The glute bridge instead is a movement that's all about teaching you to activate the glutes and building that all-important mind-muscle connection. This can be fantastic for restoring functional movement for many people and for tapping into far greater athletic performance, especially if you're someone who happens to sit a lot. My wife is being very unhelpful off camera. By the way, if you're wondering why this is the second video to be filmed from my home instead of some lovely scenic spot, it's because I and the rest of my family have been ill for ages. My uvula was swollen like a slug and sitting across the back of my tongue. It was painful and disgusting, but I imagine you're not here to hear about my uvula. Rather, you're here to hear about the glute bridge and why this exercise is so useful and something that you should include in your training. And the reason, of course, is that many people are quad dominant. That is to say that their glutes have effectively gone to sleep on them, and during movements like running and jumping, they're actually utilizing muscles like their quads more than they should be to compensate for that lack of strength and control in the glutes. And now for many of us, this of course comes from sitting for large periods of time. During this time, your hip flexors are in a shortened position and can become tight. At the same time, you're literally sitting on your glutes while also having them in that stretched position. Many of us will sit for really long durations like this for 8 or more hours every single day. So is it any wonder that over time, we lose the ability to properly engage the glutes? This means that many of us are leaving a huge amount of our athletic potential on the table. The glutes are not only the largest muscles in the body, it's also often described as anti-gravity muscle, the muscle that's responsible for launching you up in the air when you jump, for helping you to climb up stairs. So if you want to run faster, jump higher and be more explosive, then you need strong glutes. At the same time, this can also improve your posture, because if you're sitting for a long period of time and you have those tight hip flexors and weak glutes, what's going to happen is you're going to have too much force on the front of your pelvis, creating that anterior pelvic tilt. Meanwhile, you don't have enough tension at the back to straighten it back out. This results in an overly lordotic lumbar spine, that kind of lower curve, and your butt sticking out, what some people flatteringly call the Donald Duck butt. Not only does this not look particularly attractive, it's also a recipe for injury, and especially if you end up compensating for stiffness and lack of strength and control in this area by rounding the lower back when you should be using that hip hinge to pick things up off the ground, for example. The glutes are also really important for bracing the core, and you see this, for example, when performing a freestanding handstand. Here you need to really brace the core to prevent yourself from extending into that nasty banana arch handstand, which I do all the time. With a more stable core, you can prevent injury and you can create more proximal stiffness to increase distal athleticism. It's at this point in the video where I might normally show some B-roll of maybe the clouds rolling or some beautiful tree leaves. So instead, you can have maybe some flowers or a rainbow painted cat. So just train your glutes more, right? Just start doing some squats, problem solved. Not so fast there, cowboy. The problem is, of course, you can do as many heavy squats as you like, you can do as many deadlifts, but if you're not properly engaging the glutes because you can no longer activate them consciously, then you're not going to be training the right muscles. You're going to be using other muscles to power through those movements. As a result, you're not growing your glutes, you're not building as much explosive performance as you could be, and you're not fixing the problem. And this is where the glute bridge is so useful, because not only is it a highly effective tool for training and strengthening that mind-muscle connection with the glutes, it's also a great way to see whether you have that connection, whether you're actively using your glutes through the movements that you're supposed to be using them for. So let's have a look at what that looks like. Hello. So I'm going to show you now how to perform the glute bridge. I'm not going to go into it in a lot of detail the first time. Ideally, you should try this yourself and see where you feel the tension. Then afterwards, we're going to look at some fixes to help make sure you're doing it properly. So here's what you want to do. First, you're going to lie down flat on the ground. Push your thing away. You want to bring your feet to be quite close up to your buttocks. You want the shins to be almost vertical, ideally, as you're lifting yourself up. You want to keep your legs straight and aligned like this, not splayed out like you're in stirrups giving birth. And then you're just going to put your body down, and whilst resting on the ground, you're going to thrust your parts up towards the ceiling. Like I say, just do this in the way that feels natural for now. Okay, now, so ideally, we want to be feeling that in the glutes, of course. It is called the glute bridge after all, but you might find that instead you're feeling it either in your quads, like we say, you can be quad dominant, or even in your back, which is kind of even worse. What you're doing is essentially making up for the lack of utilization of the glutes by either kicking down towards the ground to raise yourself up, or even just arching the lower back, which we don't really want to do. So we need to train ourselves to utilize the glutes instead, and we can do this with a few cues and a few fixes. There are many cues that are commonly recommended to ensure that you're actually engaging the glutes during this movement. One example is to drive through the heels, maybe even to elevate your toes off the ground. Another is to really focus on thrusting the hips up to the ceiling. I've said thrusting in this video more than usual. Another one is to place something around the outside of the legs, such as a resistance band, and then to try and drive them outwards at the same time. You'd want one that offers more resistance, ideally. The reason this is effective is it forces you to engage the gluteus medius. This is a hip abductor. It allows you to move the legs apart. If you're looking for a way to remember, by the way, the difference between abduction and adduction, I like to think adduction is you're adding the two legs back together, and abduction is that one is being abducted by an alien and taken away. These tips can be really effective. They helped me early on, but what I've found to be the most useful for me is to really think about what the role, what the function of the glutes is, and that's to extend the upper leg, to rotate the femur within the socket. In other words, you're moving your top of your leg this way. For me, thinking about what you're trying to do with the muscle is a more useful method because it allows you to then carry that awareness over into other activities and actually think about the what and the why and how you should be moving. And you can assist this with a little visualization. I like to just imagine that I'm trying to curl my hamstring to touch the ground, nothing else. I'm not trying to curl the whole leg, just the hamstring. And when you do that, you have to use your glutes. You're rotating at that point. At the same time, you want to try and make sure you're bracing down with the core, creating a posterior pelvic tilt. So if you look at where your back is, normally when you're on the ground, oh, look at that, I have to take my top off. If you lie with a neutral spine, then you're going to have a slight gap here. You can't see it on mine because I've got too much extra flab. But what you want to do is close that out by rounding the lower back as though you're going to do a hollow body. And then whilst maintaining that position, you're going to drive through the glutes as well. And this is going to prevent you from using that lower back, which isn't what you want to be doing when you're doing a hip hinge. What can really help here then is to use the glute bridge as a warm-up, as a way to activate the correct muscles prior to doing exercises like squats or deadlifts or kettlebell swings. And then if you just maintain that awareness of the glutes as you're performing those movements, really asking yourself, is this where I'm feeling it? Then you can start to build that connection stronger so it starts to happen automatically. And at the same time, we'll build bigger and more powerful glutes than you otherwise could have by just kind of muddling through without really engaging the correct muscles. At the same time, there are plenty of variations you can use to increase the difficulty of the standard glute bridge. Of course, you can do a legs elevated glute bridge. You can do a one-legged glute bridge, which is also a great way to see if you're stronger on one side or if you're having trouble activating one side. You can even do an elevated one-legged glute bridge. You can do a weighted glute bridge, or you can take a leaf out of Brett Contreras' book and perform the barbell hip thrust. Here you're going to be elevating your upper body on a bench, for example, and then laying the barbell across your lap again before thrusting up, again making sure it's the glutes that you're working from. So in short, the barbell hip thrust allows you to train the glutes at a greater range of motion, and this translates to movements like sprinting, where you need to go through that greater range of motion and produce force. What do you guys think? Is the glute bridge a useful exercise? Is it one that you're already using, one that you intend to incorporate into your training? Let me know in the comments down below, and also let me know what I've missed. What other exercises like this or progressions do you also incorporate? If you're looking for a training program that does include these kinds of movements designed to help you improve your functional performance or your super functional performance, then check out my ebook and training program, Super Functional Training 2.0, the Protein Performance System. That comes with an 85+ page ebook and over 2 hours of instructional video. I'll leave a link to that in the description down below. Either way, guys, thank you so much for watching this one, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now. I've got nowhere to go. I'm in my own house. By the way, today's video was sponsored by Squarespace. Squarespace is a platform for building websites that makes it extremely easy for anybody to get started with their own website with zero coding skills necessary. That said, it also provides a full suite of tools and options, everything you could possibly need to create a fully functional professional website. I love Squarespace because it really levels the playing field this way, so that anyone can get started and create something just as effective as a much bigger company and thereby get a fair start. So to highlight a few of those features, Squarespace gives you a really simple and intuitive way to design your website. You can pick from an existing template or start one from scratch, and you can edit it to your heart's content with simple drag and drop features. It includes a fully integrated commenting system with threaded comments, replies, and likes. It has member management, allowing you to see and control who's commenting on your site and visiting. Publishing posts once your site is up and running is extremely easy thanks to publishing tools. You can schedule posts for later, you can publish them right away. You can also integrate social media with the website, so you automatically show feeds from your social media channels right there on your homepage. You can generate revenue with members-only gated content, or take it one step further and start selling products from your website using powerful and comprehensive e-commerce tools. And you can expand these e-commerce features and any of the other features endlessly thanks to a huge selection of plugins. That might mean tax reconciliation, global shipping, inventory management, pretty much anything you can think of. Head over to squarespace.com if you want to learn more, and when you're ready to launch your own site, head over to squarespace.com/Bioneer to get 10% off your first domain or website. Thanks once again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Thanks so much to you guys for sticking around till the end, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.